Chapter 2. Washington, D.C., Present Day. Colonel Kurt Hale held his badge against the access panel and was granted entry with a chirp and a green light. The drop bar in front of him silently rose. He put the car in gear, rolling downward into the garage, the darkness forcing him to remove his sunglasses. He swung around the deck, pulling into a spot labeled CEO, sitting right next to a small atrium housing an elevator. Adjacent to the glass doors was another smart card reader and a simple brass placard proclaiming Blaisdell Consulting, looking like 100 other such power signs littering the lobbying consulting landscape of Washington, D.C. What was beyond the elevators was anything but a lobbying firm, unless the chosen form of persuasion was a flashbang or an assault rifle. Kurt killed the engine and said, "Probably should enjoy this. My next parking spot won't come with a label." Removing his tie in the passenger seat, George Wolfe said, "Oh, come on, it wasn't that bad. You want this to be realistic, maybe we should invest taxpayer dollars for some fake stockholders to scream for your head." A quiet man with a whimsical sense of humor, George had lived a lie his entire professional life. His business cards said Chief Operations Officer, which fit into the Blaisdell Consulting charade, and was a title that rolled off his tongue more comfortably than his real one. Deputy Commander, Project Prometheus. Because nobody spoke the true name out loud. Kurt shook his head and said, "No, this was different. It's been 4 months and the Taskforce hasn't conducted a single operation. Even if they don't come right out and say it, mentally they're shutting down. Guy George scared the piss out of them, and they'll use the upcoming election to pull the trigger on us." "What if Hannister wins?" Kurt scoffed and said, "Well, that would be something, but only in an alternate universe. He's getting obliterated in the polls on just about everything, even his personality. Did you see that hit piece from Politico asking if people could tell the difference between him and a wax figure of himself at Madame Tussauds? He's cooked, and with him, so are we." George opened the door and said, "Well, they have a point. He is about as exciting as a ball of yarn." A little melancholy leaking out, Kurt said, "This place was just hitting its stride. What a waste. Fucking Guy George." Halfway out the door, George Wolfe sat back down, seeing the strain the last few years had brought his friend. Having walked the tightrope of clandestine operations, eschewing the very oversight rules he had once championed, George saw that Kurt felt responsible for the debacle they were now in. Before, it had always been for the greater good. Now Kurt Hale could no longer make that claim. George said, "Hey, cut that out right now. Guy wasn't your fault. You did what you could. At the end of the day, he was right. The real heat came because of that asshat Billings. You tried to save him, tried to do the right thing, and it's going to cost us. But it isn't a done deal yet." Kurt tapped his hands on the steering wheel and said, "I hope you're right, because I don't think I can go shine a seat in the Pentagon for real. Pretending to do it is bad enough." He turned and looked at his longtime friend and ally. "What will you do? I mean, if worst comes to worst." "Go back to the CIA, I guess, although I burned most of my bridges there. Probably end up as a reports officer in one of the new mission centers looking at climate change." Kurt laughed and said, "Well, at least they know where we stand." George pushed open the door a second time and said, "That's true. Nobody on the Oversight Council can say you play politics, even if that briefing may have been one of your last." Project Prometheus was decidedly unique, operating outside the normal intelligence community and defense establishments, which is to say, it operated outside the view of just about anyone in the United States government who usually oversaw such activity. A polite way of saying it was an illegal organization, albeit one sanctioned by the President of the United States.